Hey Sanket, good morning. Ramanand here. Able to hear me?
Hey Ramanan, hi. Good morning, everyone. Am I audible well?
Yeah, perfect. So we will wait for another 5 minutes.
Sure,
Yeah, we are seeing the learners joining. So once they join, you can start off with the session. Okay.
sure. Yeah.
Hey Sanket, uh,
Hey Raman, hi.
yeah. Guys, we have got Sanket today, who will be your mentor for this career service Sunday session. So he will take you through the entire topics of how will you be solving a business problem using data science at your organization. So that this problem statement he will be taking you through today in this career Sunday session. So Sanket, it's over to you. You can take it forward. So if you want to share the screen, you can share it.
Sure, Raman. Yes, I do have a deck to share. Maybe not at the initial part, but then yeah, I will refer that as we go along.
Okay.
So hi, good morning everyone. Myself Sanket Kakade, and the agenda today is to have a discussion. I won't say it's a session per se. It will be more of a discussion wherein we both will try to have our inputs, our views, basically around the topic of solving business problem or data science business problem in the real world. What are the typical challenges that we face? What are the points that we should look into before we start tackling the problem? We'll exchange our views. I will also share my thoughts around what all I feel are the points which one should take forward while building their career as a data scientist. What I felt were important points when I grew up in this industry. So let us start with it. So, firstly, to introduce myself, I am Sanket Kakde, currently working as a data scientist in Citibank. I recently had opportunity to join Citibank 6 7 months back. Before that, I was with Fractal Analytics in Mumbai for around 2 years. So my total experience is about 6 years of solving multiple problem statements from multiple domains, ranging from banking, retail, FMCG, engineering, etc. I had the opportunity to work and get my hands dirty with various data science principles and apply them for solving the problem. I have practical knowledge of tools ranging from machine learning, deep learning, Python, Spark, Tableau, etc. And talking about the profile or the day-to-day work that I do, it involves basically to involve the communicate with the stakeholders, understand their pain points, and then try to come up with a data science solution or the analytics solution around it, sometimes in a team, sometimes being an individual contributor. At times we also I also had the opportunity to lead a team of data scientists with me or under me, and the projects generally involve multiple stakeholders here, so you are sort of answerable to multiple uh, people in the same organization or in the same hierarchy. Yeah, that was more or less about myself. I will start projecting my screen. We'll refer to it as we go along. I hope my screen is visible. Can somebody please give me the confirmation?
Yes, Sanket.
Yeah, yes, thank you. So just to shrug off the early morning blues of a Sunday morning. I mean, I understand that you and me have sacrificed a lot to come here on the Sunday morning 8 a.m. session, and so basically, what I expect from this session is a complete conversation from two sides. It is not just me delivering the lectures or you just getting inputs. Me being selfish, I am also looking for some inputs from your side, and you also, since you have put in all those efforts now here on this morning, you can also feel free to interrupt me at any point, and we can have a fruitful discussion going forward. So just a quote to start off with, which says that if you torture the data long enough, it will confess. It's a quote by a famous British economist, Ronald Coase. So what he tries to say here is the data will always tell a story, whether you like it or not, whether it fulfills your assumptions or not, but there will always be a story around the data, and you need to torture it long enough so that it will confess all what it has. So that is one of the important principle going forward in a data scientist's life, wherein you have the data, you have certain assumptions, you try to uh, make the data say those assumptions or back those assumptions, but at times those assumptions are failed, and you might have certain new understanding from the data which will sort of erase your assumptions or erase your stories at the back of your mind. So that is that. Going forward, let us delve into my journey of data science as a data scientist. So talking about my educational background, I completed my BE in electrical engineering from Pune University back in 2014. After completing my engineering, I had the chance to join Tata Consultancy Services through a campus placement procedure, and I did actually join TCS. So when I joined it, so first 1.5 2 years, I was in projects wherein it was not exactly a data science project, you can say, but then it did involve some of the data science tools like SQL, and being from a non-programming background, it also gave me a little bit of exposure of programming in those couple of years. So I won't discount those years. Those were building blocks of my journey into this field. And then I also had the opportunity to move into a data science project as the part of intra company or inter project, you can say, inter project movement, wherein once you finish one project, you have the opportunity to go and be a part of another project. So that is that I moved into a data science project, and that is when the struggle started, and this struggle is continuing till now. And why I call this struggle is basically data science per se is a very vast field, starting from data visualization to data modeling to model implementation, programming, etc. It involves a lot of aspects, and to expect somebody to master all of them is sort of unfair, and it is a false expectations to have. So that is why when I say the struggle to acquire new things, to learn, to evolve, that has started when I entered into this field, or maybe before I entered into this field, when I was preparing to enter into this field. And this struggle is still continuing. I can't say that I have mastered or I know good enough things in data science. And in my personal opinion, no one should have that attitude when working in this field or working in any field in their life, to be honest. Thirdly, how did I get introduced into data science? And it is a sort of a fair thing to say that the crop coming into the data science field in today's world do have the monetization or high pay factor in the mind, and it is not wrong to have that. It is not wrong to earn money, in my opinion. Everybody has their families to feed, and everybody has their careers to grow. But in my honest opinion, that should not be the drive, or that should not be the primary reason why you are getting into data science field. It was certainly not to me. And the aspects or the skills like curiosity, eagerness, the eagerness to dig deep into what is going on, to find the answers of whys and hows, and also the appetite to acquire new skills, because after some days there is a new technology, new language, maybe new tool coming in the industry. So it's always good so that you have the appetite to acquire those skills. You might or might not acquire them, you might not get your hands dirty or might not get the opportunity to work on that, but just the appetite or the drive to learn those skills is very important. uh, Being in this dynamic field, you also, I feel, have the skill set which meets this field and not get stagnant at one point. So that is about my journey into data science. Then moving on to the current organization and my work experience. So like I said, I am working with Citibank now, and it's been a little while that I am with this organization. So just to go into a little bit details of the organization. So Citibank is one of the, basically it is a US bank, and it's one of the oldest financial institution that we have, with the history of around 200 years, and currently serving more than 200 300 million customers all across the world. It provides banking solution in consumer as well as in the institutional sector, meaning that the clients or the users of Citibank can be an individual, or it can be an organization or a firm which consults or which takes Citibank's help to meet its financial obligations. How it utilizes data science. The second question, or the reason why uh, I am part of it. So Citibank is one of the early adapters of big data technology. When in the time and age of the big data and the big data boom, it already had the people working on big data, setting up the stack and utilizing that into current uh, current decision making of Citibank. So that way, Citibank is one of the better placed banks, I would say. I mean, I'm just comparing this bank with its competitors, the financial institution and the bank. So Citibank is definitely well placed, and it has good infrastructure in terms of big data and the uh, other technologies around data and analytics. Typical, let us say, usage of analytics or the problems that we are trying to solve in the horizontal of fraud analysis, then some of them in liquidity management. We have problem solving going on in customer retention. We also have not exactly machine learning, but in terms of automation, to tackle the help desk automation task, meaning that automate as many mundane tasks that we can, in order to have them done in a much smoother way and much faster way. And the emergence of COVID-19 has only accelerated these initiatives, because everybody working from home and everybody uh, taking help of the digitization. The analytics solutions on top of that is sort of a must have. So the analytics adoption has only been done in a quicker way due to the COVID-19 issue. And talking about the tools and the solution that it uses, that we use basically in Citibank, uh, they vary from data dashboarding, the data visualization part, wherein we mostly use Tableau and ClickView. Then for machine learning, we also have machine learning and deep learning projects, deep learning initiatives going on. The solution can be around time series analysis, forecasting. We also have solution wherein recommendation engine is implemented. So this is more or less about the technology stack that is being currently used in Citi. And to underline my role in the current problem that I'm solving, or my team is solving, my role varies from start off with the understanding the business requirement, because business requirements are very much in a language in which the business wants to communicate, and it might be very different from the way the analytics language is. So the business requirement will be in a very business terms, and to understand that and then try to find a solution around it, building a framework of that solution first, maybe try out a proof of concept for the solutioning, then building the whole solution, and then automating it, on the productionizing the models, and and make them handy or make them usable for the end user, is what my current role is. So it does involve coding, it involves sort of modeling the model we built, it also involves the testing of the model that we have successfully built. If there is any gap in that, it also has feedback loop wherein we constantly monitor the models that are in the production and check if there is any need to update those. So it is basically, there are multiple facets of a data scientist wherein we get to get our hands dirty, in short. Then moving ahead, here is a typical problem solving process in the data science industry, or for that matter, uh, any uh, any problem on the data science base that you try to solve. And this process can be divided into two parts. One is basically the one which it takes 80% of your time, and the one which is the final stage wherein the modeling and evaluation of the model will take place, which will be around 20% of the time. So 80-20 principle is one of the famous principle in data science, wherein which says that 80% of the work you do will have 20% of impact going ahead, and on the other front, the 20% work you do, 20% in terms of time, will have 80% of the impact. So just because the impact is low for the first block, you cannot uh, take it lightly or skip that part if you may. The 80% part, which is basically defining the problem, then data preparation and EDA, is a building block on which the modeling and the evaluation uh, building is built. So if these blocks are weak, if these blocks are not thoroughly considered, not thoroughly analyzed, not thoroughly studied, then there is every chance that the modeling that you do will not meet the expectations, and you might end up going back to the square one, starting from defining the business problem to then all the way to modeling and the evaluation. So we'll start with the first block, which talks about defining the business problem. There are a couple of things which are important in defining the business problem, and as a data scientist, or maybe somebody who is new in the data science field, you might not the have much say in the way the business problem is defined, but then you will have impact of it in your subsequent workflow. A well-defined business problem will help you laying out clear plan. And what I mean by clear plan is the clear plan in terms of timelines, in terms of resources, in terms of skill set that you want in your team. That is only possible when the business problem is well defined, and you know what you're going to do in next 2, 3, 6 months. Then it is easy to lay out that foundation. Secondly, setting up the success criteria, and this is one of the point wherein I feel this criteria is, from the stakeholders point of view, is not correctly set, or it is very dynamic in nature. It can change midway, and at times you might not have much say in it, and that is one of the things. So setting up the success criteria and have the business assumptions going forward is one of the important factor. Then moving ahead to map the machine learning problem. So what you get from stakeholders is a problem in terms of pretty much business language, and it is not well defined one, and if you go through it, you might not understand what we are trying to solve here. So it is important to convert that business problem into a data science problem, wherein you know that what are you trying to achieve. Let us say if it is a machine learning problem, then what is your final variable or y variable, whether it is a continuous one or a distinct one, depending on that what is the type of algorithm that you are trying to apply. That will get clear. And this will so basically converting the problem into business, converting the problem into data science problem will help to identify certain algorithms to tackle those problems, and you can only concentrate on those going forward. Then thirdly, the data preparation, and I can't stress enough on this point. This is one of the, I would say, one of the boring and time-taking part in this whole life cycle, along with the exploratory data analysis. But it is a make or break for the machine learning problem that you will solve going ahead. So in the data preparation, it involves understanding the data and what are different constraints to it, formulating the analytic strategy, and if there are any required to do that. And by transformation, I mean you at times have to merge two different data usability. You have to have one unified level on which you are going to try to model them. we have in the deck forward, we have a couple of use cases wherein we will walk those use cases in front of in terms of these building blocks, and then they will get much clearer. So right now I'm not giving you any example for all those examples or two use cases catering to this cause. So the next block is exploratory data analysis, which is basically combination of your statistic skills and the domain knowledge that you have. And the exploratory data analysis, or EDA that we call, can have multiple aspects. It can have graphs, it can have various charts, it can have statistical numbers, it can have various metrics will show how the features are performing or how the data looks like, what is going on with the data, if there is any trend in it, if there is any seasonality happening in the data, how the variables are interacting with each other. And by this EDA block, the output that you get is basically the features that you feel are important for this for the modeling perspective. So when you get the raw data, when you get them into machine the data preparation block, where what you get is all the raw data, irrespective of that data is important or not. By passing them through data preparation block, you will have the data cleaned, and by data cleaning, I mean you will have the issues in the data like outlier or maybe missing values, etc. Those will be resolved, and then it will be passed through an EDA block, and EDA block will give you an output wherein you will have only important features or important fields which affect your final outcome. So that is EDA helps you in selecting or shortlisting the variables going on to the modeling process. Then the modeling block. One thing I would like to highlight here is when you visualize, or when you look at the term of machine learning or data scientist for that matter, most of the people consider the modeling block as the only work that a data scientist does. But I mean, and this understanding does not come to an aspiring data scientist until they come into this industry and do all of this work and get their hands dirty, spend a lot of time and a lot of effort in data preparation and EDA. So the big dream of building fancy models and applying the state-of-the-art algorithms is sort of broken. And that is why I want to highlight this point, that being a data scientist or being a machine learning engineer is not only about modeling. In fact, modeling is very small part of it, and all the parts before that and some parts after that will form a data science pipeline for your project. And talking about modeling, so it involves basically applying, depending on the problem statement that you have, whether it is a regression problem or a classification problem, or maybe it is a clustering problem. Depending on the type of problem that you're trying to solve, it will have uh, application of multiple models on that data, and then trying to choose the best possible model. It also involves uh, the application of modeling principles and the tools, whether you want to apply machine learning or deep learning or to arrive at the solution, that selection. And then if you're going to apply machine learning or deep learning, then what algorithms fit for this data, what algorithms give you the best result, will be part of the selection of that algorithm, will be part of the modeling process. And a good model will always have a feedback loop or the update loop, wherein you as a data scientist or somebody who is maintaining the model will understand going ahead if the model is uh, going right or wrong, and if there is a particular shift in the data, how the model is reacting to it. For example, let us say we are trying to predict the sales of something, and a phenomena like COVID-19 occurs. We are basically trying to predict the sales of one of the goods. For example, let us say sales of laptops happening in a monthly basis in any of the distributor. And say, for example, a scenario like COVID occurs, wherein you see in the initial months of COVID, the sales is very low, and then maybe so after 2-3 months you see that the sales of laptop have gone up because everybody is working from home and everybody needs a device. So these are a very unusual situation to understand for the model, and that is why the feedback loop for the model is important, wherein all that data is fed in, and going forward the model will train on that data, consider those data points as well. And the last point is to evaluate the model, and this evaluation is it is laid out in the first procedure in defining the problem solving, wherein the success criteria is said. So depending on that success criteria, the evaluation will take place. The metrics to evaluate the models can vary, and the selection of those metrics is important. For example, let us say that I am solving the problem of credit card fault detection, wherein the fault cases, the probability of fault is very low. If you look into the real world data, it is around 0.05%, meaning that there are only 5 fraudulent transactions out of 10,000 transactions. So one of the famous or mostly used metrics in data science is accuracy, which talks about the total correct predictions divided by all the predictions. So I just want to ask this question to the audience: will accuracy be the correct metric for this? If yes, then why? And if no, then why not? Maybe you guys can unmute or have your chat window open.
It can be a very good indicator, especially in customer acquisition, leads type of cases. But if you want to do it on drugs or some formulations, then it will have, as long as it doesn't boomerang on you. I mean, a wrong guess doesn't cost you a huge money, then it's okay. Then that criteria is okay.
So here what we are trying to do is to understand or to predict if there is a certain transaction happening, if it is a fraudulent transaction or not. And like I told you, the probability of that being a fraudulent transaction is 0.05%. So this is the problem statement, or this is the case that we're trying to solve, and so modeling and everything we have done, and we are trying to arrive at any of the evaluation criteria. So will accuracy be the criteria for this?
So in my opinion, it will not be a correct metric.
Mm-hmm.
Because suppose I build a model, I don't do anything, I just hard code it, like it will always give false, like it is a correct transaction. So
Mm-hmm.
even in that case also, it will give 99.95% accuracy.
That is right. Yes.
Yeah. So in accuracy term, it would be like it is a very good model, but it is actually doing nothing. It is just hard coded.
Correct. That is a very good answer. So anybody who wants to take a guess that what can be a good accuracy metrics here, if you already have studied or if you have gone through some of the metrics in machine learning?
So I think area under the curve
Mm-hmm.
might be a good one. I think it gives some weightage based on the based on the number of distribution in the classes.
Yeah. Area under the curve is, and Priyanka and Vijay say recall. So yeah, recall is one of the important metric along with the AUC curve. And the choice of metrics will also depend on the cost. Like somebody just now mentioned that if we go wrong, what is the cost involved there, and if we miss out some of the fraudulent transaction, what is the cost? And on the other hand, let us say if there is any fair transaction happening and we term that as fraudulent, then what is the cost incurred? So from, let us say, a bank's point of view, missing out a fraudulent transaction is very costly, but then terming some transaction as fraudulent, which is actually not, will not cost me much of a loss. So it also depends on what kind of cost that you are able to sustain, or you're able to go with, and what is acceptable and what is not. So basically that is the criteria by which the evaluation metric or any metric will depend on.
Especially in the example which you have given, I have noticed that in some transactions, banks calls the customer that we are not sure whether this transaction is fraudulent or not, but please confirm it to us. This is an excellent way of finding a via media in between of this. But till that via media comes, a data science model has to factor this.
Yes, that is right. And why they call you is because some modeling, or maybe it is analytics or anything, but by some way or the other, they think that it is a fraudulent transaction that we have done, and they don't mind calling out the customers and confirming them. But then what they will not accept is some transaction going under the table, and they won't understand if it is a fraud or not. So the cost of first mistake is fine, but the cost of second mistake is not acceptable from the bank's point of view, because that will incur a lot of loss for them. Another example for this will be let us say cancer detection, wherein obviously the number of people having cancer is very few as compared to the people not having the cancer. And if I'm predicting basis the patient's health, if he has cancer or not, and from a doctor's point of view, think about it, or maybe from a patient's point of view, you can, if a doctor terms somebody as a cancer patient who is not a cancer patient, this is situation one. And the second situation is somebody has cancer, but then doctor does not predict it, or doctor does not inform them, or does not know it. So the cost of second case is basically we are talking about cost, talking about people's lives here. So the cost of second mistake is very high. And these are some of the subtle examples wherein you want to also consider the cost of going wrong, and of course the underneath data distribution as well for the evaluation metric. Then now we will see one of the use case that I solved in one of the data science problem that I had, and we will tie that use case in this. I mean, in this way or in this block, and then we'll also discuss what impact it was able to make and what were typical challenges that we had faced. So the problem statement is about demand forecasting for a retail giant company, and the product that we are trying to forecast is tea, meaning chai. And let us go back and fulfill these blocks. So defining the business problem. So the business problem that we had was basically to forecast the demand of tea in the 2 months in the future. So if you are sitting in the month of December now, you should be able to, I mean, the model should be able to predict the demand of various tea brands that we have for the month of February. So that is 2 months in advance. So that was the problem. And when we received the problem, it was in the business terms saying that we want to predict the number of tea packets or tea sold in the month of February, or not in the month of February, but 2 months going forward. So that was the problem. It, in a way, does not tell you what is that you are trying to solve, what is the data available in your hand, what are you going to go about it, any machine learning algorithm or anything. So that is how you will receive the problem statements, where it will not have any ML or any data science aspect to it. And because these problems will come from a senior stakeholder who might or might not have exposure to analytics. Then setting up the success criteria. Setting up the criteria also depends on what the existing process is and what are you trying to get better off. So in our example, the current process was, there were a team of experts which were trying to predict the demand 2 months in the future, and they had their numbers, they had their accuracy or how good they predict, and the task for model is to be better than them on a consistent basis for a long period of time by a certain threshold. So if, let us say, the team of experts is able to predict the demand and achieve the accuracy of 80%, then the task for model is to better them by at least 5%. So at least of 85% accuracy you should be able to achieve on a longer duration of time. So it is not just for 1 month or 2 months, but if we consider the span of 6 months or for a year, your accuracy should be consistently better than what the existing process is. And I think that is very good way to set up the criteria for your modeling. So at times what happens is there are pure numbers that we are talking about. Let us say I want 90% accuracy or I want 95% accuracy. But then it is also important to check what is the existing process going on. If you already have 94% of accuracy, and implementing data science or implementing analytics just for the sake of 1% accuracy does not really make sense from the business point of view. And on the other hand, let us say if you have a very bad accuracy of 40% of any process, then setting up the expectations that machine learning will do magic and it will achieve 90% of accuracy is very unfair and very unrealistic. So it is important to understand what is currently going on, what is the current approach that is there, and then what better we can do. So that is about success criteria. Then converting that problem to a machine learning problem. So like I said, we are trying to predict the goods sold for next 2 months, meaning that it was definitely a regression problem. It was not a classification problem. That is one thing. And as we went along, we also understood that it is a time series problem also, meaning that the goods sold in the month of January will have some effect on the goods sold in the month of February and subsequent months also. So there is an interrelation, a time dependent interrelation per se there in the data. So if you want to consider that time dependent relation, then treating that as a time series problem would only make sense. And then data preparation. So the data what we had here was basically the past month's data of sales, meaning that how many units were sold and what was the total volume sold by the organization. And then the another data source that we had that told us about what were the different promotions that were run on the data, because the promotions run on the product, I mean. So because the promotions will have an important impact in the way that tea was sold. So the promotion calendar we had. We also had economic data for that country. So we were trying to solve this problem for Egypt, and we had the last 2.5 years of data, and we observed that there is a certain transformation happening in the data in between that time period. That is because there was an economic reform going on in that country during that period back in 2018, 2019, and that had some impact in the way the sales was happening for tea. So those were major data sources, or the features. Firstly, the past sales. Secondly, the promotions that were going on. And by promotion, I mean it was not just about whether the promotion is happening or not. It has the information of what is the promotion happening, how much is the discount, how long is the promotion happening, whether it's a promotion at the start of the month or the end of the month. So all that information about promotion. Then we had the economic data of that country.
Hello. Are you explaining some different slide than the slide which we are seeing?
No, I am on the problem solving process now. I hope you are seeing the same slide.
Yeah. But I think we are repeating probably what you are saying now. This whole, you explained it earlier, the whole process from defining business problem, then mapping, then data preparation, exploratory data analysis, modeling, and evaluation. Then again, we are starting the same thing. So is it that you are trying to say some different slide and using different
No,
slide?
so what I'm trying to do here is I have a business problem, the next slide to it, wherein we forecasted the demand of tea for the Egypt region, and I'm trying to fit in all those criteria, or I'm trying to fit in all that process into the previous slide, and that is why I want everyone to visualize this slide, and the content will be different.
Okay. Can you intermittently change the slide so that we can see the business problem and the correlation?
Sure.
Thank you so much.
So the problem is to forecast the demand of tea for the Egypt region for one of the retail giant, one of the largest FMCG manufacturer in the world. The stakeholders that it had was the regional sales and planning head and their team. So basically, the solution that we were trying to develop will impact their planning and the way they go about their business. The impact of it. So let us keep the impact and challenges faced at the end, because I want you to go through the process first and then discuss about the impact. So then, going back to the older side, we were talking about the data in hand and understanding the data, and let us talk about performing the transformation. So the data what we had, the sales data, was on a daily basis, meaning that for every day I had the sales of tea. That data was recorded at the daily level, whereas the promotions happening were at the weekly or sometimes at a monthly level. So if there is some promo running in the shop or in the mall, it will be on a weekly or a monthly basis. It will not be a one day promo. So it was also important to perform some transformations on the data, because your sales data is at daily level and your promotions data is at monthly or a weekly level. Secondly, the economic data that we talked about, it was at the monthly level. So it is important to get all the data at one particular level at which you are trying to solve the business problem. If you are trying to predict the sales on a daily level, then it is important to convert everything on a daily basis. If you're trying to solve the problem, or if you're trying to predict the sales on a weekly basis, then it is important to have the input data, everything on a week basis. So initially we had the data at the daily level, because the data volume in that case will be large. If you are talking about a 2 months time period, the daily level data will give you around 700 data points, and a weekly data will give you around 100 data points only. So initially what we thought was, let us go with the daily level data and try to solve that problem. And then we moved to EDA, or the exploratory data analysis, wherein we visualize the data, we visualized what is happening underneath. Is there any trend, or is there anything that is important from the modeling point of view? So there are a couple of things we understood. Firstly, when you analyze the data on a daily level, there is a lot of disturbances or a lot of spikes and dips happening in the data. And what we also understood is it might not be good for the model, meaning that the model will not be able to predict such high spikes or such low dips on a daily basis. So we again went back to the data preparation phase, and we converted the data on a weekly basis. And then what we understood is the trend is pretty smooth now, and from a prediction point of view, the data is well predictable, or the model can understand what is happening underneath the data. There is another thing that we understood and that I want to highlight here is that, so we are trying to solve this problem for Egypt, like I said, and we observed that there are certain time in a year, one in the first quarter and couple of them in the third and fourth quarter, wherein the spike of tea is, the sales of tea is very high, and we were not able to answer that. If the sales is very high, we should have some explanation to it, and we, being data scientists, did not really have the explanation to it, because we did not have much knowledge of the Egypt market and the way things worked in Egypt, and also the domain that we were trying to solve the problem of. So then we went back to the stakeholders, went back to the people who had defined the problem and who had defined the success criteria with those data points. And what we understood from the conversation is, it is because of the Ramadan or the Eid, the festival of Eid, due to which the sales is very high. So Eid being the majority Muslim country, the festival of Eid is very, it is celebrated all over the country, and so it has impact on all aspects of their lives, and consuming tea is not different. So we understood that, okay, so occurrence of Eid or occurrence of such a big festival will have some impact on the way the tea was consumed and tea was sold. So what we did, we then again went back to the data preparation phase. So if you see, I am trying to sort of tell you that this map, although there is only unidirectional arrows that we are saying, but at any point, if there is need, you need to go back to the previous block or to the initial blocks to get some things done right. So like I said, we again went back to the data preparation phase and understood where all on a weekly basis, on which all weeks the Ramadan month or Ramadan weeks were occurring. So we created extra feature or extra variable which will tell you if it is Ramadan week or not. That will give some idea to the model if there is a big festival going on, and it will understand that there is an expected spike or expected rise in sales. So that is more about the data preparation and EDA, and we spent a lot of time in these two blocks. Then, like I said, modeling. So as we discussed, that this is a time-dependent problem. The uh, sales of for the month of February will have some impact on in the sales of month of March. So there is a time dependency to it. So obviously, whenever there is time dependency involved, the first go-to model or first go-to algorithm is ARIMA, which basically is to forecast or to predict the entity which are dependent on time. So we applied ARIMA to it, and what we saw was, even though it is a time series problem and the algorithm is also time series algorithm, but then we were not able to forecast the sales or the predictor variable with that much of an accuracy. So we will not basically meet the success criteria. So then we applied a couple more algorithms which will cater to the time series in hand. But then the success criteria was far away from the accuracy that we were getting. Then we shifted our focus to typical regression problem, wherein the algorithms like linear regression or decision tree, random forest, naive Bayes are all families of algorithm, I would say. And we experimented with each of the algorithm. We experimented a lot, and we tried to change some of the tuning parameters in it. We tried hyperparameter tuning, extensive tuning. I mean, we used to tune the models for a couple of days straight to arrive at some accuracy. And what we observed was, with some additional changes in the data, the model of gradient boosting machine, or the GBM that they call, was one of the accurate model. And we also saw that for a longer duration of time, let us say I want to predict the sales of next 2 months for the 6 months of time. So not just in the month of February, but from February to October, I want to predict. Then this model of GBM was quite stable and quite accurate. And this is how the most optimal model or the final model was considered. And then the evaluation criteria, like I told you, the evaluation criteria will be set up on the success criteria that was defined in consultation with the business. So the evaluation criteria will have some inputs coming in from the business as well as the inputs from the data scientists. So this is one of the problem statement that we solved, which resulted in saving of $3 million for each quarter for the manufacturer. So when the solution was implemented for that particular region for the T section, we saw the saving of around 3 million. So this saving was because the existing process, we were able to better that process, and we were able to eliminate those errors, and those errors used to cost the company of the cost of around $3 million. And like I walked you through the whole cycle or the whole process that we did, there was a few challenges that we faced, that we feel that they were very tough challenges, and we ended up spending a lot of time in it. Those were, firstly, the data quality, meaning that the data was very messy. There were a lot of missing values. At times the data was not labeled well, and the data was, since it was coming from different data sets. Like I told you, the sales data was on a daily level, the promotions were at the weekly level, and we also saw that we created a flag, or we created a feature around the festivals in our daily level. So the data mismatch, the level mismatch actually was one of the huge problem. And then this problem had an impact on productionizing the workflow as well. So by productionizing, I mean to set the whole process as the automated process. There was no manual intervention involved. So when we are trying to train the model, there was not a single code that we ourselves was running. We ourselves were running, and the whole code was taken care by some automation piece, and we did not have to intervene at any stage of the model. So to productionize that workflow was one of the challenge for this business problem. So those were our learnings, and this was one of the example wherein the problem started with the stakeholders telling you what they want to do, and that is selecting the best algorithm going forward was all done by the team of data scientists and the domain experts in the team, and we did end up solve that problem successfully.
Vishal, this is Shalini. I had a question.
Yeah.
You said there was a dip in sales during the month of Ramzan or during that time, right? Do we also need to consider historical data prior Ramzan, how the business was doing to be able to arrive at some prediction models? How do we really go? Because it is based on certain criteria, right? And which might be temporary.
Right. Yes. So our understanding of rise in sale was from the historical data. I mean, we did not have any input coming in at first place, but somebody telling us that Ramadan is important and you consider that in the modeling. It is by doing the EDA, the exploratory data analysis, seeing some charts, seeing the trends of last 2-3 years, that we understood that there is some spike in the data, spike in the sales, and we as such do not have explanation to it. And then we went back to the business, the stakeholders, and then we got the input that okay, this is because of the Ramadan month or the Eid festival that was there. So at times you will have inputs coming directly from the stakeholders, they're telling you something, and the other times you will have these stories built up from the data itself, and then you confirm those hypotheses or confirm those stories behind it. So a combination of you having some knowledge and you getting some knowledge from the data is what will make a better algorithm going forward.
Got it. Yeah. Thank you.
I
I
hope
have
that
one
answers.
question,
Yeah.
Sanket. We're talking about a retail giant. It means most of its turnover might be very big and it might be probably MNC. They may
Yes.
have their own ERP or something.
Yes. Yes.
So it means the data was not coming directly from the ERP. It was coming in pieces from different stakeholders. Maybe sales department is creating its own report in Excel or something.
Exactly.
Was it coming like that?
Yes, yes. Like I told you, there were different data sources. The sales data was coming from one source. The promotion data was coming from one
Okay, then
source.
in that case, my
The
simple question is, didn't you ask them that why don't you give them an SQL dump or something so that you can figure out with the SQL level itself, the inconsistency in the data can be handled very easily at that stage without bothering the stakeholders to give their data into Excels or anything. Because anyway, eventually that data will be derived from ERP data.
right, but so firstly, we'll also have to look at what is the infrastructure or what is the data, what to say, uh, data literacy of the organization, and that starts from the way you maintain the data, and the data science and all will be the next step. But the data maintaining that is a big task, and because it was done for not so much of an advanced country, if I may, the quality of the data and the what you say, the storage of the data was not very reliable. Like you said, we received the data from various sources, and mostly in terms of the reports and in terms of the Excel files. And it is also because it was firstly done at a POC level, so we did not have access to the larger database or the whole SQL dump that you are mentioning. So it was firstly started off as a trial experiment, and that is why we had the reports to access at the initial level.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, moving ahead, I do have another problem statement here, but I think we are uh, running a little short on time. So maybe let me just give you the brief of the problem statement, and we might not pass it through the block that we saw now. So this problem statement was for one of the energy regulators for Japan, and the problem statement was around the the domain was the engineering domain, and we were trying to solve the problem statement for one of the power plants. And the problem statement involved predicting the boiler downtime for next 3 months. The downtime was, there are several reasons due to which a boiler can have downtime or a boiler can be shut down. And we were concentrating on one specific equipment called air preheater, called as APH. And the problem was to predict the downtime of the air preheater, which will eventually cause the whole boiler to be shut down. So the problem statement was again in terms of this, that there is an air preheater, an equipment placed outside the boiler, which basically preheat the clean air going in for the combustion. And the statement was we want the failure prediction of this APH, and that was more or less about it. That is why we, like I said, clearly defining the business problem and success criteria is important. If you have the problem coming in from the stakeholders in such a vague language, then it makes your job as a data scientist a little bit tougher, because then you have to dig deep into the problem and the domain. And if you are short on the domain knowledge terms, then these can possess a big challenge going forward. So we firstly had to understand what the air preheater is, what are its different criteria for failure, how we as a machine learning, data scientist can have impact on that, what is the data at disposal, what is the different level on it. So what we understood was the data was coming in from various sensors. So there are hundreds of sensors in the power plant, and we had the data for each second coming in. The data can be different temperatures, different pressures, different, let us say, carbon content in your coal, and the moistures. We also had data of the outside world, meaning that what is the outside temperature of that boiler, etc. So that was more or less about the data. And the problem statement, like I said, was to predict the failure. And this was done we firstly tried using the traditional machine learning approach with the time series. So if you see here, the failure of that air preheater was also time dependent. So the way air preheater operates today will have some impact on the way air preheater operates tomorrow and going forward. And that is the time dependency that we had. And we tried different models in machine learning domain, like I mentioned in the first problem statement. We also had our hands dirty with the deep learning modeling as well. And what we observed was deep learning, or the LSTM technique that some of you might have heard of, is what fits in to solve this problem. So that was done using LSTM, long short-term memory, for your reference. And couple of challenges that I want to highlight. I don't want to dig deeper into what is LSTM and how we applied it, what are the data transformations. So we had a good view of it in the last problem statement. I want to just highlight the challenges here. Firstly, the shortage of data. So if you compare a machine learning algorithm against a deep learning algorithm will be better only if the data at your disposal is very large, of the very large volume basically. And that is when deep learning easily beats the machine learning problem. And the reason why deep learning is not applied in every aspects of data science is because availability of the data. So at times you have very small data available, or there is a change in the trend. So the data that you want to understand, that is changing every 2 years or 3 years, and so that is why you have only that much amount of data at your hand. So data shortage is one of the important criteria or important problem that you tackle when you apply the deep learning model. And secondly, there was a problem of inconsistent expectations from stakeholders. So the success criteria that was set at the start of the project was varied at different phases of the project, and we as a provider we did have some say. I mean, it is not like stakeholders is keep on changing it and we just don't have any say in it. But at times we do, as the service industry, we do have to oblige those expectations and try to meet them, especially when it is a proof of concept and not a full-fledged project. So you just want to check the applicability of machine learning or deep learning on the given problem, and basis your success, the next initiative would follow. So in such current situation, we as a data scientist might not have much say in it. We might not have much say in the expectations from the stakeholders, and at certain points you are trying to meet those expectations. So those were a few problems that we faced here. Then moving forward, let us talk about the skills that help me as a data scientist. Firstly, the domain knowledge, and I can't stress enough on this aspect. So like I said, like we saw in the case of forecasting the sales for tea, something like the importance of Eid festival. So let us say I have enough domain knowledge of the region of Egypt region, and I know what all factors are important. Then I can have the domain knowledge applied on that problem statement, and which will save my time and effort in the way I explore the data. Of course, EDA is important, but then if there are certain assumptions, certain things which are cleared because the level of knowledge that you have of that domain, that makes the job of modeling or job of analytics professional much easier. I do have one example of domain knowledge here. Yeah. And I want to highlight the case of the 2019 World Cup that we lost in the semi-final. So, and this is at the end, this is the statistics for after the end of the World Cup, which talks about the most runs saved for each of the player. So it basically highlights top fielders from that whole World Cup. And what we see here is, let us say you do not consider Jadeja at the top. What we see is every player has played 7, 8, 9 matches, and it has saved runs of 20, 30, 34 of that range. And if we see Ravindra Jadeja, we see that he has played only 2 matches, but he has saved 41 runs. So while doing EDA or while doing data cleaning, I come across the situation wherein a player has played only 2 matches but has saved 41 runs. And I mean, from a pure statistical point of view, I might treat this as an outlier and might remove it from my data. But then, what does my domain knowledge tell you? My domain knowledge tells you that if there is a fielder which is not in the playing 11 but comes in as a substitute, he can still save some runs. and those runs will still be counted in this overall tally of 41 runs. So if I don't have that knowledge, and that knowledge is not a data science knowledge or an analytics knowledge, that knowledge I acquired by knowing the way cricket is played and watching that World Cup. So that is the domain knowledge that I'm talking about. If you don't know this fact that somebody can have very few matches played but can have high number of runs, you might very well miss out on a data point which might turn out to be an important one. So this is one of the classic examples of you knowing the background story or you not knowing the background story and then taking the decision on top of it. Then the second skill is storytelling ability. You can't just explain data science to somebody who does not know it in terms of various metrics and in terms of pure statistics. The story has to be built in a way that it is digestible to somebody who does not know data science at all. And that is why the storytelling ability, or you building up the story and presenting its impact, how it is useful for their business, and what all can be achieved using that data science solution is important. That is why storytelling ability or data visualization ability is important. Then thirdly, making data science digestible to stakeholders, meaning that the higher stakeholders, the managers and the directors do not know these algorithms. They might not know what linear regression is, or what gradient boosting is, what random forest is. And that is why it is very important to explain those models to them, meaning that what impact does it have, what certain feature is impacting the data, in which way. And that is why the term of black box versus white box modeling. So a black box model is something which will give you a very good accuracy or very good output, but then you do not know why it is happening. And deep learning is a classic case of black box modeling, wherein you give some input, you get some output which is very much on the expected lines, but then if somebody asks you why the output is that way, what are the significant features, or what are the things which are impacting the most for this output, using deep learning you might not be able to answer those questions. And a white box model is something wherein you can quantify the impact, or you can visualize the impact of each of the feature and the way it was affecting. For example, the occurrence of Eid month is shooting up the sales. So if I'm able to establish that relation, let us say, what is the impact, what is the quantifiable impact of the festivals, so that is a white box modeling. So the simpler models like linear regression, logistic regression, to a certain level decision tree as well, are considered as white box models, wherein you can tell anybody what is happening inside the model, and if, let us say, you change some input data, what will be the probable impact on the final outcome. So that is the white box and the black box modeling. Again, referring back to the box, the out of box thinking. At times what happens is the solution that you are trying to solve is, you're already solving that and there is nothing coming out. So you have to understand that the way you're solving the problem might not be the correct way, and you have to see the problem not from the problem level but from the solution level. So you have to see the problem going one step above it. Then only you'll be able to devise some strategy or apply some new algorithms or look the problem from a certain different viewpoint. Then understanding the ML algorithms and their functioning. So this is a very technical skill. So the domain knowledge and the storytelling ability are sort of the soft skill that we were talking about. But then understanding the ML algorithms, their functioning, why certain algorithm is applicable in a certain situation and why not. If there is there is an issue regarding overfitting or underfitting of any of the ML algorithm, what is the possible solution to it. You will know this only if you know the functioning and the applicability of the ML algorithm. If the, for example, if the data is not linear, there is a low chance that something like linear regression or logistic regression will be a final algorithm or the fitting algorithm for that data. And all this comes with certain experience and certain skills and certain knowledge of the different ML algorithms. And if you see in the market, there is a new algorithm added after every 6 months or after every year. And that is why keep updating yourself is important here. Also, you cannot forget the basic building blocks, something like basic statistics, regression techniques, the tree-based algorithms like random forest decision tree are some of the building blocks that I feel are important. And of course, on top of that, you can build your skill set, learning different methodologies, learning different algorithms of machine learning. Then moving ahead to the tips, something that I want to share with you, and something which I felt very important in this journey of last 5, 6, 7 years. Firstly, there is a saying that Rome was not built in a day. So something like data science or being in a machine learning industry or being a data scientist will take some effort and will take some time. It will not just be that one fine morning you acquire all the skill set and you are ready to conquer the world now. That will hardly be the case. It is a continuous and evolving process. It takes months and years to acquire those skills and apply those skills. So that is one. Firstly, understanding understanding the business pain points and how data science can bring in values is important. I mean, you can solve as many problems as you want at your home or at your organization, but if it is not bringing any value to business, then it is as good as a garbage from a business point of view. That is why tying the data science advantages, tying them back to the business is very important. And that is why setting up the success criteria that we told, the success criteria will be able to tell you how much the business is able to gain from it. It is not just you building the models and that's it. You have to make telling impact in fact to the business and have your business maximized, and that is how data science or analytics will grow. Thirdly, complex modeling may not be answer at all the times. It's important to keep the solution simple and understandable. The simpler the solution, the better it is to make somebody understand or to make the solution more robust for the future changes. And that is why always try out simple methods of modeling before diving into any complex modeling framework. Then understanding of mathematics and coding. These two are, I often see these two factors as overlooked, not given much of an importance, but mathematics and coding will always help you in your data science journey, while it is whether it is when you are at a time when you have to decide between, let us say, two algorithms or two frameworks, or it is at a time where you have to code yourself to get your hands dirty to get some output. So mathematics and coding will always have importance, no matter at what experience level you are. Maybe you're a 10 years experience guy, and it is still very helpful to have some of the coding lessons with you, and of course the mathematics is. So these are all the important tips and tricks that I feel will help you in the journey of you being a data scientist and you making the difference to your business and your organization. So that was more or less about today's session. We have 5 minutes of time to answer some of the questions that you might have. I'm also checking the chat window simultaneously, so you can put your questions there as well.
Hi, good morning, Sanket.
Yeah, hi Pooja.
Yeah, first of all, thank you for this for such wonderful and knowledgeable session. I have a question. See, in general, how long a data science project goes? Like, I understand it varies from problem statement and business impact, but on an average, how long it takes to solve a business problem? How long the project goes?
So, along with the type of problem that we're trying to solve, it also depends on what level you're trying to solve. If you are trying to solve the problem, which is like it is applicable to different aspect, or let us consider the example of demand forecasting that we talked. So, you are trying to solve the business problem for Egypt region for tea. Let us say you want to extend that problem statement to certain other region or to certain other product, then the same exercise needs to be rerun or reapplied depending on the different variables or depending on the different constraints. So all that exercise will be repeated. But then if it is just a simple POC, proof of concept, that you just want to quickly check if how much data science will be helpful and how much value it will bring, then maybe it can last from few weeks to few months. And if you want to productionize it, make it accessible to everyone, and you also want to extend that solution to other parts, then it can run for a few years as well. I mean, I've seen projects running for 1 to 2 years as well.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so,
Just one more, please. As
yes,
you said, like we have to predict the T cells for next 2 months. You are given the
yes,
problem
yes.
statement just 2 months. So was that time enough to like build a model and like give it to the user to predict as well?
No, so building the model, we had the past data, and it was not like we are in the month of December. So by the end of December, you need to build the model. It was a longer process. The final aim of that process was to be able to predict that much. So it was not that you have to predict in a month only, but you can take as much time you want. But then you build such a model that if you give the data of past 2 years till the month of December, it should be able to give the output for the month of February, for that matter, 1 or 2 months in advance. So that was the final, what to say, outcome or the expectation of the model.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to understand. Yeah,
Yes.
thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll go through some of the questions in the chat window. What were the tools that were used here? So we mainly used Python and Tableau for data visualization whenever we want to build a story around it, and Python mainly to code. What were the accuracy measures you considered? Again, the prediction. Yeah, it was RMSE, or the total accuracy. Yes, that is right. Out of context questions, if they would be giving it in SQL, it will not be hard for them to plot them and check for basic discrepancy. I think Excel and CSV is better because it can consistently summarize on basic reports. Yeah, that is right. So the data what we received was in terms of the summary or the reports, and of course having it in Excel uh, is makes it easier to make some manipulations in the data. It's not that you can't get the SQL data uh, in the Excel or CSV format, but then, like I said, there were certain limitations in the way the data was shared, and also limitations around the way the data was stored and the technological platform for the organization. Data will be continuous. Yes, Mayank. And then the question is, if the source of the data is same, then inconsistency is only in queries, which is easy to handle at database level. So firstly, the data was not same, and as we went along predicting for the future months, like I said, we wanted to test our model for next 5-6 months. So we also wanted to understand the, we also wanted to check the applicability in the real-time scenario. So as we moved along, in the months, we received different files or different data sources, and what we understood was the data consistency was a big issue, whether be it in terms of column names or be it in terms of the way columns were organized. So these were some of the issues of the data inconsistencies. Question from Karan, who says, if you want to treat outliers, you need to have proper domain knowledge at certain point, but if we are new to the specific domain, how to handle such situation? Yes, Karan, that is right, and that is why I mentioned that having some domain knowledge is important. So let us say if you are thrown into a project of which you do not know what the domain is, then it is important to either have somebody in your team who understands the domain well, or you yourself putting in some efforts to understand the domain and understand how the things are happening in that domain. So yes, your LinkedIn link, yeah, I will post the link. Yeah, I think I've gone through most of the question or all of the questions. If anybody has any questions, still has any questions, then yeah, we can answer them now. I have posted my LinkedIn link, and I assume that there are no more questions to be discussed here. So yes, Raman, over to you now.
Guys, any questions? Sanket has answered all the questions. If any questions, guys, you can ask it now. We've got another couple of minutes of Sanket.
Hello, Sanket.
Yes.
We want to find out which model or which algorithm we will be applying on the data.
Yes.
So how do you generally prioritize with a linear data? Which is the first model you try to attempt, and then explore the second, then explore the third, then explore the fourth accordingly?
Right.
For example, simply linear regression or random forest, or accordingly.
Right. So choice of algorithm depends on two things. Firstly, what the data looks like. If it is a linear data, meaning that the trends within the data are linear and can be explained by a linear model, then obviously the first preference is to linear regression or logistic regression. So logistic regression is for the classification or the categorical data, whereas the linear regression is for the continuous data. And the attempt is to always start with a simpler method, and those simpler methods are, like I told you, linear regression, etc. And then have your basic model built in, so that you understand that this is the very basic algorithm that I've applied and I've got certain accuracy. And if I want to apply more complex methods like decision tree or random forest or gradient boosting, I need to sort of pass that threshold set by a very basic model, and I need to pass that with a certain cushion or certain margin. Then only going to the complex model makes sense. So the baseline model that we talk about in the data science industry is often a very simpler model, which is easy to implement and which is very quick to build also. The next point is, if you have a very large amount of data with you, then it is a good idea to visit some of the deep learning algorithms as well. But if the data volume is one of the constraints, then there is no point in going to deep learning algorithms.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Sanket.
Okay, I think so. No any more questions. So thanks, Sanket. Thanks a lot. It was a great session. So guys, Sanket has shared his LinkedIn URL. So if you want to connect with him, you can connect with him on LinkedIn. And any questions or anything apart from this, you can just ping me on Slack. I will share it with Sanket and try to get answers from him on those questions, on those queries. So thanks a lot, Sankesh.
Thank you, Aman. Thank you, everyone. Thanks all. Have a nice weekend ahead. Bye bye.
Thanks, Sanket. Thanks for joining, guys. Thanks a lot.